Closed captions is available if you would like to use that. Just click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen. We are grateful to have Molly Block with us again this month to be our closed captioner. And we are grateful to all of you and all of the people who have been supporting these monthly Azkarah gatherings. Now, if you don't have your cup of comfort with you or your candle, we'll play a little bit of music while you go and go get those things, and then we'll reconvene in just a few minutes. Welcome back with your cup of comfort. When will I be myself again? When will I be myself again? Some Tuesday, perhaps in the late afternoon, sitting quietly with a cup of tea and a cookie. Or Wednesday, same time or later. You will stir from a nap and see her. You will pick up the phone to call her. You will hear her voice, unexpected advice, and maybe argue. And you will not be frightened. And you will not be sad. And you will not be alone. Not alone at all. And your tears will warm you, but not today, and not tomorrow, and not tomorrow's tomorrow, but someday, some Tuesday, late in the afternoon, sitting quietly with a cup of tea and a cookie, and you will be yourself again.
We'd like to invite you to take just a moment, a nice breath, whatever it might be. Don't force it. We are gathering together in this moment to tend to our grief, to acknowledge our losses, whether they be massive in our world, deaths that are painful transitions in our communities, or the very personal losses in our own lives. Whatever it is, we'd invite you to tend to it in this moment a little more deeply. If in this moment you need to go a little deeper into yourself, we invite you to do that. If in this moment you find yourself drawn to the outside world in a way that is distracting of your own grief, we invite you to gently close that door again, to let you tend to whatever your own grief is. Whether you are grieving one or more deaths that were recent or from long ago, you are welcome here.
And if you are also grieving societal or environmental issues and losses, systemic threats, stresses, the damage wrought by violence, fires, floods, climate change, or natural disaster, you are welcome here. Whether or not you are Jewish or read Hebrew or have explored Jewish ritual for yourself or something in between, you are welcome here. Whether you are here to mourn one specific person or thing, or the cumulative losses from these past months, or challenging adjustments in your day-to-day life under the ever-shifting pandemic conditions. All of these, you are welcome here.
We are grateful to be with you and to share this space for resting in our grief, for reflection, and perhaps comfort together. The truth is, there have been so many losses in our lives, collectively and individually, these past few seasons. Some of the losses of these past years have been obvious and clear. Precious people in our lives, collectively and individually, have died. Homes and forests have burned, jobs lost, savings lost, evaporated, businesses and nonprofits shuttered, cherished programs shelved, medical concerns arose, loved ones are declining, neighbors and friends, students and teachers moved away or fell out of contact. Familiar loving, comfortable forms of caring and community got put on hold. Other losses are a bit more amorphous. We still don't know if, when, or what world we will be back to, the world we thought we knew before, a world we were in the process of coming to know. Can we in some way make up for lost time, separation in our relationships? Will we recover from stressful aspects of work and simply from being in the world? Will our children get to play freely again? Will our favorite cultural venue or restaurant survive? Can our sanctuaries once again be places of safety and comforting places to gather? How much longer will we continue functioning like this? Uncertain of the future, seeking our own resources of strength, while so many of us also feel weary and numb, anxious, unruddered, trying to sustain a sense of calm, of goodness, and of possibility for ourselves and for others in our lives. Let us remember how, and in the depths of our fear and mourning and bereavement, to know that when grief takes its place, it can be humanizing. It can give shape and honor to the truth of our pain, our loss, our mortality, and it can give shape to our love. We'd like to invite you now to reach for the candle and the matches that you have. To take a moment, a nice breath. And with just the simple act of striking a match and lighting your candle, to acknowledge that in light, this is not meant to be against darkness. For many of us, darkness is very nourishing, but simply, oddly, light and dark somehow exist together. Let's take another breath. Notice and acknowledge the fullness or the inarticulateness of what you are feeling, reflecting, thinking in this moment, what you are sensing, what you are holding in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, and to acknowledge the relationship with your person or the people who have died, whether recently or long ago, perhaps even recently inside your own self. We all bring to that our makom, our memorial space.
In just a moment, I'm going to read a poem to you. And while you remain muted, I invite you to read aloud along with me. In this poem, the word them recurs, and you may choose, instead of saying them, to name those who you are remembering today. We remember them in the rising of the sun and in its going down. We remember them in the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter. We remember them in the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring. We remember them in the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer. We remember them in the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn. We remember them in the beginning of the year and when it ends. We remember them when we are weary and in need of strength. We remember them when we are lost and sick at heart. We remember them when we have joys we yearn to share. We remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. I invite you to take just another quiet moment for individual reflections, and then I'll turn it back over to Rabbi Eric.
It is lovely that already folks have begun to type in some reflections in the chat for us to gaze upon. And so we'd like to invite you to put into the chat the names of those you are remembering today. You may wish to include the relationship to you or something special or quirky about them, moment you shared or a precious object that reminds you of them. But we'd like to invite you to take that time to share some of your memories, to know that whatever name you put in this chat is not just a random combination of vowels and consonants. It's an entire world to at least one person, an entire world to you. So we invite you now to take some time, put their name into the chat, share something quirky about them, their relationship to you, perhaps a memory. I lost my beloved husband yesterday. No, it was April 11th, 2017, but it feels like yesterday. My beloved mother, Marlene Kronik, who died in 2020, she was the kindest human I've ever known. Jesse Hawkins, Hot Wheel Collector. Irene Furman, Mother, Mini Mom. My mother, Blanche Betty Backrack Rose, died suddenly last April. She loved to squeeze her loved one's cheeks. Sigmund Sid Furman, father, grandfather, Big Pop. My mom, Arlene Santer, died early morning on February 8th, 2022. She was a passionate, creative woman. She made our household growing up full of creativity. Dad called her Doots. Albert Freeman, a man of integrity, a loving human being who believed in peace, love, and books. Funny, kind, and always thoughtful. This was my husband. No name is just a random combination of vowels and consonants. Every name becomes an entire world. Zichronam livracha, may each and every one of their blessings be a memory to all of us. We invite you to take a moment of quiet, a moment of silence, as we prepare to recite together the Kaddish. We invite you just to take another breath, let it be whatever it is, and invite you to move a little bit more deeply, more spaciously into whatever the landscape of grief is within you, to even maybe look at some of the corners of the grief that you would like to tend to. As we recite Kaddish together, please feel free to join me, sitting or standing or even lying down, whatever feels right to you in this moment. And if you want, at the end, we invite you to unmute yourself for our final amen together. Please join me. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirote, Be'amlich malchute, Be'chayachon v'yomechon, V'chaye dekol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mivarach Le'olam Ul Almei Almaya. Yit Barach, Yishtabach, Yit Pa'ar, Yit Ramam, Yit Naseh, Yit Hadar, Yit Haleh, Yit Halal, Shemedu Kudesha Brihu. Le'ela Minkol Birchata Vishirata, Tushbechata Benechemata, Da'amiram Be'alma, Be'imru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'imru Amen. May the source of peace bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who mourn. And let us say together, Amen. When our temple stood in Jerusalem and was destroyed, we became a diaspora nation. And the rabbinic mind, looking for a way to create a Judaism that would be contemporary to every time, took grief and created a particular saying that will be said to every single individual person by recalling the collective grief of the destruction of the temple. And in this very simple way, across the millennium, created a link of communal to individual grief to acknowledge that when grief comes to us individually, it is as if it's only to us in our own world. And yet each and every one of us comes to a place of grief in its utter universality, in its utter experience communally. And so we'd like to invite you to take another breath, to pay attention to whatever that corner might be for you to tend to your own grief with this music and with these pictures.
All those places, all those corners and shores and pathways and roads. Now, we have a poem for you by the Irish poet and philosopher John O'Donoghue. I don't speak Irish, so I'll try to pronounce the name of the poem correctly. Beannacht. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas trays in the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life.
Once our temple was destroyed and we became a diaspora nation, one of the great moments of chutzpah that we developed was, instead of allowing or permitting or perhaps even being told that only the high priest could bless, we began to bless each other. And so in a moment, we're going to ask you if you might take a breath to think of what blessing might look like for you, even in the face of loss, or maybe with the face of loss, or even acknowledge what the lack of blessing really is in your grief. And to open yourself, all of us together, to whatever the source of life that pulses in us and between us across the world and the millennia might look like. All blessing begins with imagination, with something to hope for, even in a moment of hopelessness, even if the imagination is wishing that you could just resurrect your loved one before you. I'd like to offer you the priestly benediction in Hebrew, and then ask you to unmute yourself to repeat the blessing after me in English. But first, take a moment of quiet. Let your eyes go into soft focus or into focus or close. Another breath to tend to your grief. To receive this easily or reluctantly, to let it come into your place of tending grief. Yivarechechem Adonai v'yishmerechem. Ya'er Adonai panav elechem v'chunechem. Yisa Adonai panav elechem yasem lechem shalom. I'd like to invite you, please, if you would, to unmute yourself. To take a moment, even with this technology, to do your best to maybe make eye contact in the randomness of looking at each square on your screen to see if you can catch another person's eye, to make some kind of direct eye contact with them, to gaze upon each other. And to allow this cacophony of blessing each other to just be a kind of music to our ears to tend our grief. And so I invite you to repeat this after me. May God bless you and protect you always.
May
May
God
God bless you and protect you always.
always.
May God's face
May God's
God's
face
give you warmth and graciousness,
Give you warmth
warmth and graciousness,
and may God's face
and may God's face
ever be lifted up toward you
be
ever be lifted up toward you.
and may this holy attention
and
And may this holy attention
grant you peace.
Grant you
grant
peace.
you peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Isn't it beautiful to be out of sync?
yeah.
We want to thank you for joining us today, for bringing your caring, your weary and loving hearts, for sharing names and memory in different ways, for all the ways in which we have reflected ourselves and been quiet in the spaces that we've held together. We also want to thank you for sharing your financial blessing with us and for supporting the Healing Center so we can do this with you month to month. Our next Azkarah will be on March 31st, and we invite you all to join us, please, again, and invite you to invite anybody else that you'd like to come and join you in this sacred space together. We'd like to invite you once again, just as we tried to make eye contact with one another, to make some kind of a blessing gesture toward one another, like maybe hold your hand up and curve it in a way that might imitate holding somebody's shoulder, or holding your hands up to bless one another, to frame your own face, to form a heart, whatever you wish to do in this moment, as we give a virtual, visual gesture of gratitude and farewell to one another, as we say, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu Va'al Kol
Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu. V'al Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom.
Have a lovely evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you. Same to you.
Bye.